So I get a lot of questions on what saw I was using in the video there I made about making some benches with a chainsaw. So yes, this is the saw in question. This is a Stihl MS660 full wrap, which I really like. As you can see, it has an extra handle over there. That's really great when you're in kind of a weird position trying to, fell a tree or something. On it right now, it has a 28-inch Stihl bar, 50 gauge. Don't really use this one very much because it's kind of heavy. And this saw has been sort of worked on where it has a triple port muffler where you've got a port here, a port here, a port there. The piston, or excuse me, not the piston, the cylinder has been ported, and then it has a max flow air intake on it, which I can show you here, where it's basically like a dirt bike air filter. Just a foam oil filter, or foam oiled filter rather. And yeah, this thing is scary. I generally don't use 50 gauge chain on it just because it will stretch it if the cutters get dull at all. So generally I run it with this 32-inch reduced weight. This is an Oregon bar. Really like this thing. As you can see, this center part of the bar is aluminum. This thing just weighs next to nothing. It's just awesome. The balance on this saw is just perfect. I can use this thing all day and it doesn't wear me out. I really like having a 32 because as tall as I am, I can just kind of use the saw and not have to bend over for cutting smaller wood on the ground, which is really nice because that hunching over with like a 16 or 18-inch bar just kills my back. I can just stand upright with this and cut stuff on the ground, which I really like. And I generally run a semi-skip chain on this, which we'll go into detail here on the different chain styles next. But yeah, this is the bar. I absolutely love this on this saw. I generally don't use this 4-footer very often. For the wood around here, this thing is way overkill, but I do use it for ripping. I've had a few big slabs where I've had to cut from both sides with this, and this saw just ran this 4-footer like it was nothing. It's really crazy. Putting the bigger bar on there, you do need to adjust the carburetor just a little bit to make it run right, and it just kills it. You can bury that 4-foot bar in a big piece of walnut and it does not slow it down. It's just crazy. But yeah, that's pretty much what I was using. Love this saw. I would like to pick up an 880 just because it's kind of cool, but this thing pretty much will do my needs and then some. So anyway, I guess we'll talk about the chains next here, and I'll move the camera in so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Okay, so starting off here, this is the Bailey's Rip Chain. Right there, you'll notice the difference between it and say this other just standard Stihl chain. The angle on the cutters here is drastically different. See the rip chain here, the cutter is almost horizontal to the chain here. That is what makes this a rip chain. Yeah, these are intended to cut with the grain rather than against it, although I actually find this to be quite useful just because of the way these cutters are. This is very difficult to dull, so if you are cutting through some really gross, muddy, cruddy wood, I find that a rip chain actually works quite well. It's nowhere near as fast as a chisel chain, but they'll take a lot of abuse, so if you're cutting out stumps and things like that, these actually do work pretty well. The next chain over here, actually both of these are very similar, but you'll notice that the amount of teeth are different. This first one here is a full complement. Let me adjust the focus here so you can see that. There we go, a full complement chain. This is a 50 gauge. Which I generally run on that 28-inch bar I have on my MS660, and then the next chain over here is a 63 gauge, which doesn't really make that much difference, but it is a semi-skip, where you'll note here, okay, you've got a cutter here, a space here, and then a cutter. So this has fewer, about a third fewer teeth on it than a full complement. And now this is nice if you are running it on a long bar, and either your saw is kind of small for that length bar, or you want to clear chips really well. That extra space there allows, you know, chips to stay in there and get, you know, slung out. So this is what I generally run on that 32-inch lightweight bar I have on my 660. This is generally what I use as far as just kind of general purpose cutting around here, because I am rather tall and I like a 32 where I don't have to bend over to cut stuff on the ground. So that's generally what I use here. I find that on this 660, if this 50 gauge chain gets dull at all, it will stretch. Probably not such a big deal if you are running a saw that's not kind of juiced up the same. Alright, so we had some storms roll through, and this bitternut blew down, and I don't know if you've ever seen bitternut before, but it's really pretty wood, so I'm going to try and get a few slabs out of this crotch here. So I've got my 4-foot bar in there with a rip chain, and before I do any milling like this, I will take a screwdriver and just back off the high-speed idle jet just a tad to kind of like richen up the mixture, so I'm not pushing the saw as hard. Just a little, you know, sort of insurance there on not burning up your saw on a really big cut like this. All right, yeah, those turned out looking really pretty. I'm excited for those to dry down. I think I'm gonna stash these in my greenhouse, so hopefully by next fall I can actually use these. Yeah, those are pretty. Anyway, yeah, I don't know if you've ever done that before, but you get lots of spaghetti-like shavings, and that pretty much did in this chain. It needs to be sharpened now, so you don't get a whole lot of cuts out of a rip chain like that before you have to sharpen it. But man, those are going to be pretty. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video here. Just kind of wanted to give a little brief explanation of my saw here and the different bars I'm using and kind of what I'm using it for. So anyway, I'm Darlington Farm. Thank you for watching. Please comment, rate, and subscribe.